Tony Hody Training and Consulting presents the Crash Course Podcast. Sponsored by Engage, Builder Prime, and Hiring Strategies. Your weekly destination for coaching, inspiration, and new skills to help you maximize your income and success in the home improvement sales industry. Here are your hosts, sales and training experts, Phil Wiley and TJ Parsons.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Crash Course Podcast. My name is TJ Parsons, joined once again by Phil Wiley, and today's topic is all about recruiting. And recruiting, hiring, training, leading, retaining, they all go together. They're all dependent on one another, but the foundation of it all is high quality recruiting.
Matthew Caldwell, I read a quote of his the other day that recruiting should be viewed as a business partner, someone who is critical to the success of the business. We talk all the time about when a business wants to grow, there's several different factors that make that up, but none of them are more important than hiring the right salespeople. And recruiting is such a big part of running a business that you can't just add recruiting to your to-do today list. You can't come in and say, okay, Joe quit last night, so I better run an ad and I better start screen calling and try to get a class scheduled. If any of you are ever involved in hiring of salespeople, if you're doing it right, at best, you've got a class starting in 2 to 3 weeks. If you're putting them through a proper training class, now you're talking about another 2 to 3 weeks worth of training. So when you make a decision that you need to hire somebody, you need to realize at minimum you're talking 5, 6, 7 weeks before that they even run a lead. So it's important that recruiting becomes an everyday structured part of your day, that you have a structured system on how you recruit. You can read all over the internet how much a mishire or hiring the wrong person cost your business, and you can find things as low as 12 to 15,000. But one thing they say in the home improvement industry, especially, is if you take about what your average sales rep makes in your organization, which nowadays is around $100,000, and you say that a mishire is going to make up about 30% of that person's expected income. So now you're talking about losing $30 to $40,000 worth of just loss because of hiring the wrong person. And there's so much focus and attention on how do we close better? Can we have closers camps? And all that stuff's important. But we put nowhere near the focus and attention on hiring salespeople as we do closing a sale. So I ask you a question, TJ, how much net profit, how many sales does a company need to generate based on their average profit just to recoup the amount of money they lost on a bad hire? If you're in that ballpark of, $10,000 to $15,000 an average sale, and let's say you're making 20, 30%, I mean, you got a ways to go to make up for just, a bad hire. So it's very important that you put as much attention on recruiting salespeople as you do running a lead and selling a lead.
Yep. Well, up first today, we're going to go over some basic questions that you need to answer about your process to ensure that you find the right individual. And the first question is, what is my recruiting budget?
Yeah, and if you do this the right way, where recruiting is an everyday activity, then it's something that you're going to be doing 300 sometimes a year. And you need to get with the owners of the company, and you need to get with the people that make those decisions. And you need to say, how much money do I have allotted for recruiting? Meaning, how much money do I have to run ads? How much money do I have to administer assessment tests? How much money do I have if I want to go to a job fair? If I want to, do some professional marketing that I'm going to put on one of the social media sites. So I need to know, how much money do I have to work with when it comes to recruiting?
Absolutely. And number two, what sources for recruiting do I have access to? And have I explored all available choices?
Yeah, I mean, we all know there's tons of sites out there. We've used them all over the years. I remember, TJ, when I applied for a job in the home improvement industry 20 some years ago, um, the only source was the Sunday newspaper. You went to the one ads, you applied to an ad in the one ads, and then all of a sudden, companies like Monster and ZipRecruiter and Indeed and companies like that popped up. But you got to find out, because they're like ice cream. There's a different popular flavor every other week. What's the most popular websites? What's their pricing? Do they have specials? What can I negotiate with them? So yeah, you definitely want to stay on top of your resources and make sure where's the right place for me to put my time and my budget for recruiting.
And number three, how much does it cost to place an ad on each of those sources?
Right. And that goes back to, making sure that you negotiate a good deal with whoever you're going to use, and make sure you know exactly how much an ad's going to cost you. And of course, if you've done any recruiting on any of these sites, you know that there's other functions. You can mine resumes. You can add boosters to your ads. We're going to be doing a webinar in the future on recruiting, and we'll probably bring some people on from some of these different sites to have them talk about features and stuff that they offer. But there's a lot of things out there to position your recruiting efforts in the right direction, and make sure that you're one of the first ads people see when they sign on.
Perfect. And number four, which sources are performing and which are underperforming?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty simple. We're going to talk in a minute about a process of tracking your results on a daily basis. Not only do you need to know, which websites or which sources are pulling in applicants, but making sure you've got the right ad. You can't, if you got the wrong ad, it doesn't matter how good the website is. And if you've got a great ad, it doesn't matter if the website's not getting viewed. So you got to make sure everything's in harmony to make sure you're getting your advertisement in front of as many eyes, qualified eyes, as possible.
Number five, what's the best time and method to contact my applicants?
Yeah, now this process you can make this work for you if you do things the right way. I always found that it was great to try to make as many screen calls as I could in the morning and talk to as many people as I could, and then leave as many voicemails as I could. And then I would save myself some time in the early evening to start returning those calls as they return my calls. Or maybe I set up a time, because, if you're calling in the morning, they might be at work, and they may say, "Hey, now's not a good time. Can you call me back at 5:30? Can you call me back this evening?" So I always thought it was great to do it early in the morning, get it out of the way, get your calls out of the way, leave voicemails, schedule times, and then hit it again in the evening for a little bit. Again, it's something that, as long as you dedicate a little bit of time to it every single day, you don't get behind. And then it's not like you're back in school again, where you're trying to cram for some big test and get it all done in 2 or 3 days, because obviously that's when you make bad decisions. You get desperate, you bring people on board that you normally wouldn't. You don't have as much of a pool of people to look at, so you don't end up finding the A salespeople that you're looking for, and you settle on a bunch of B's and C's. And obviously we don't want to do that, or the return on all that effort will be poor.
Yeah, for sure. And as far as the contact method, I think obviously outside of, standard phone call and email, I think if they don't answer, there's a large debate about whether you should go with a voicemail or do a text message.
Yeah.
I'm personally on team text message simply because I've seen a lot more results with that. Like, even just from calling clients and customers. If you leave a voicemail, a lot of the times you don't get a response, but if you shoot them a text and just explain the reason for the call, a lot of the times you'll hear back at least. So I think if you were debating between the two, I'd say probably use both, but don't be scared to shoot a text message.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of both. Yeah, it's a great point, TJ. I'm a fan of both because, in today's world, people prefer a text over a voicemail. And at the same time, I like to leave a voicemail because I want them to know, I want them to hear my voice and hear my genuine, hey, I looked at your resume. I was very impressed with some of your background. I would love to talk to you about an opportunity we have. I want them to hear the conviction and passion in my voice. But at the same time, the text is awesome because a lot of people just don't. I mean, how many times have you bumped into a buddy or something and you're like, dude, I left you a voicemail 2 weeks ago. How come you haven't called me back? And they look at their phone. They're like, oh, I haven't listened to my voicemails in a month. So, it's important to do both. That's a great point, TJ.
Question number 6, have I mastered a screen call, and have I mastered my phone interview as well?
Man, that is an awesome question. You have to have a structured, just like we have to have a structured system for setting a lead and a sales presentation, you have to have a structured screen call. You got to know what questions to ask. You got to know what you're listening for. You need to know how to respond to certain things they say. And definitely the phone interview. When you go to do a phone interview, you need to be able to ask the right questions. And also when it comes to doing, the actual physical interviews, you need to make sure that those are scripted out as well. What am I looking to have? What's the goal? What do I want accomplished on this first interview? What do I want to find out about the applicant? How much do I want to share about my company and the opportunity? How much talking am I going to do? How much talking are they going to do? You need to have all this planned out and structured so that people get a consistent interview when they come in to meet with you.
Yeah, that'll help a lot. Question number 7, do I perform every interview myself, or do I ask for a second opinion?
Man, that's another awesome question. I've been in both situations, TJ. I've been in the situation to where I didn't do any of the initial interviews. I just did the hiring interview. I've been in situations where I did the entire process and then I handed them off. Probably the last couple of years as a sales director, what I found was a great process was I let the sales managers do the first interviewing. And then I had them come see me and sell me on why they want to hire that sales rep. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, they take ownership of that salesperson because they're talking me into bringing them on board, which means I know they're going to give the time and energy required to get that person developed. And then at the same time, there's not an uncomfortableness of, how many times, TJ, when you were doing training, did you spend 2 or 3 weeks training a class? Then you hand them off to sales managers. And it's like, oh, I just spent 2 to 3 weeks with you, TJ, and now I don't even talk to you anymore, or I don't see you that often. And who's this guy that I'm working with now? And so it's good to have them involved in the beginning of the process all the way through, and even bringing them into the training and keeping them involved in the training if they don't do it themselves, because you want that relationship between the new hire and the sales manager to be very tight, and you want the sales manager to have that person's success as one of their biggest interests.
And of course, the obvious benefit is it does give you a second filter.
Yep.
Because we've all been guilty of it, that we talk to someone during an interview and they're just very engaging and we see a lot of potential in them. And then, sometimes if you're doing an assessment, the assessment comes back and it's not great.
Right.
And you might still feel passionately like, wow, we had such a great conversation. I still want to bring them on. And it's good to have that second person to be a checks and balances for you in those scenarios.
That's a great answer. It's sometimes it also gives the applicant the opportunity to meet more people and hear, the opportunity and the culture and the company from different standpoints. So it's good for the applicant too to meet a couple different people, I think.
Absolutely. Question number 8. Do I document my recruiting activities daily? And if someone else is doing the recruiting, do I see those results daily?
Extremely important. I mean, we have both said on these webinars, what gets measured gets done, right?
Hmm.
And recruiting is such an important part of what we do that you need a checklist that gets done on a daily basis that tracks all of your results. If somebody's recruiting for you, that's something you want sent to you by the end of the day. If you're the one doing the recruiting, you need to find somebody that you report to and say, hey, just to hold my feet to the fire and accountability, I'm going to shoot you this thing every day. If you don't get it, I want you to ask me where it's at. But yeah, results need to be documented daily for two reasons. Number one, accountability. And number two, now when somebody says, what ads are working, what ads aren't, what's the best days to screen call, what's the best time to get a hold of people, you've got all that documented so that you can make give a factual answer versus an opinion.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. Number 9, how many responses do I need for the desired number of hires that I'm hoping for?
That's another great question, and I wish I could give you an answer for that. A lot of it has to do with time of the year. A lot of it has to do with the type of ad you wrote. A lot of it has to do with the source you used. I will tell you that if I had to guesstimate, usually I talk to probably 3 or 4 people before I met somebody that I wanted to bring in for an interview. Usually I would say I probably interviewed maybe 2 to 3 before I found somebody that I wanted to hire. We usually the ones we want to hire, we get them because we interview the right way and the opportunity is a great opportunity that they're fighting for. But, you've got to, and that's another reason why you've got to give it enough time. If you need to hire 2 people, you should have 4 to 5 that you're seriously considering.
All right. And lastly, do I know what personality types do best in my business? Do I have a form of testing in place to find the top personality types? And have we identified which types we hire and which ones we pass on?
You know, we're not getting paid to say this, but we've worked with Dave Yoho and Associates for years on his disc profile. And, they tell you exactly what profiles you're looking for, which ones are definite hires, which ones are the ones you want to stay away from. I've also found that these personality profiles, once you use them enough, will really give you a good idea of who will do better selling a need, who will do better selling a want. I mean, I think there's a fine line, especially when it comes to bathrooms and kitchens. Windows is more need than want. Wouldn't you agree? And the same
Very
with
much so.
yeah, and with roofing, very much a need. I don't think anybody is out and about and says, "Honey, I'd really like to get a new roof." I mean, they need a new roof, right? But when it comes to remodeling your kitchen and your bathroom, although there's times it's a need, it's more of a want item. And those personality profiles will tell you who will do better selling a need and who will do better selling a want. There's also some other assessments out there that we use with hiring strategies, which gives us phenomenal feedback on the person that we're considering. It gives us great questions for the final interview, and we'll get into all that again on our webinar. But yeah, there's a lot of great tools, and you need to use them because TJ just said it a minute ago. You interview somebody and you fall in love with them. And even though there's things that you see that are going to be a challenge, we all think that we can make chicken salad out of chicken poop, right? And we need to make sure that we have these assessments and these tests in place that say, no, I know you like the guy, I know you like the gal, I know you want to hire him, but no. And it'll save you a lot of money because there are certain personality types, and we're not going to give it away today, but there are certain personality types out there that know how to trick you and know how to make you think they can be successful in sales when they can't. And the only clue I'm going to give you is think about a golf coach. A golf coach can teach Tiger Woods everything he needs to know about golfing. But when's the last time you ever heard of a top golf coach going out and winning a major golf tournament? They know how to coach. They know how to teach you how to do it, but they can't do it themselves. There are personality types that are out there that'll make you think they're going to be one of your top salesmen, and they wouldn't even be able to close a deal. So you need to know what those are and what to look for.
Perfect. So if you can go through those 10 questions and find answers to all of those before you start your hiring process, you're obviously going to find a lot more success. So once we start generating applicants and we get more and more people in the funnel, the next question becomes, what do we actually look for in that sales rep before we hire them? And I think a big question that your entire company has to be on board with is, do we want an experienced sales rep, someone who's done this before, maybe for a competitor, or do we want someone who's totally green to the industry or even to in-home sales?
Great point. I mean, you have to ask yourself when you're interviewing somebody that's got a lot of experience in your industry, am I going to have to break a lot of old bad habits? Am I always going to hear, well, when I was at ABC, we did it this way, and when I was over here, we did it this way? And I don't need to deal with that. This is how we do things here. If you've got some great ideas, come pop by my office and share it with me. But, don't interrupt my training or my sales meeting to tell me how you did at a company that you obviously failed at, or found a reason to leave, or you wouldn't be here. So, but at the same time, I mean, TJ, I think you could probably remember there was a time where we had we were humming it with 36 salespeople. We were rocking out of 4 offices. We were breaking all-time records. And we had maybe 2 of our sales reps out of 36 that came from the home improvement industry.
Yes.
I mean, you were with Radio Shack. I was a produce manager for Meyer. I mean, so, again, it goes back to those personality types. You got to find the right people for the opportunity. A little bit of experience doesn't hurt. A lot of experience doesn't hurt, as long as you can find somebody that doesn't have all those old bad habits that you got to break.
And you can see a lot of that in their personality profiles. If there's someone who feels like they already have all the answers and they're not going to be open to learning a new process, a lot of those assessments can help tell you that. But yeah, I mean, that is, if I went back and reviewed any of the turnover that we had over the last 15 years, I'd say a lot of it was people that had done the job before, or some version of it, and just couldn't get past, hey, we don't do it that way. We have our own system that we're trying to teach, and we need you to get on board with this. So yeah, that can save you a ton of time if you try to avoid that.
Yep. And I'm going to give a little nugget here real quick to people that hire sales reps that you've probably never heard before, but I learned it from experiences that don't turn out the best. But this is a little gold nugget. But when you interview somebody who sold a similar product as yours for a much smaller company, or they sold it from a manufacturer standpoint, and now they want to get into the retail part of it, you have to understand they have no concept of, why is your product that's very similar to what I was selling, why is it twice as much as I was selling it for before? Maybe you have a much bigger overhead than they did because you have 4 or 5 offices and they had 4 or 5 salespeople. You're doing $20 million a year. They're doing $2 million a year. You've got a canvas team and a show team. They're all 100% word of mouth. I mean, you have to be careful of that because I have failed every single time. I hate to say that, but I failed every single time I hired salespeople that came in my door and I was asking them to sell a $1,200 window after they were out selling a $400 or $500 window, and they just couldn't. I don't think it was a skill set as much as I think it just messed with their head. I They felt uncomfortable doing it. Now, me and you, where we were brought up that way, we saw 100% of the value in everything that we sold because we knew everything that went into it. We knew how much our company stood behind it. We understood the warranty. We knew how much it meant, how much it was just to turn the lights on every day. So, we had a different opinion of how much we sold our stuff for than somebody that's been out there doing it and selling it for a lot less because, some of these companies are just, we joke around about them all the time, two guys in a truck, but you and I both know there's companies out there that, all right, rent's due in 2 weeks. We got to go out and sell something. And they sell it for material, labor, and then they add the price of rent to it and say, let's go. And then, that's not how you run a business, obviously.
Yeah, I think if you're asking my opinion, I think 9 times out of 10, I would much rather hire someone who's completely new, not just to the industry, but to in-home sales. Simply because, and I think this is just our personal experience, but I believe so much in our processes and
Mm-hmm.
the scripting and the tools and the way that we taught things. I'd rather have a ball of clay that I can mold rather than having a rock that I have to try to chisel away to get it the right shape.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing about hiring people. I mean, first of all, you got to make sure that they can do the job, that they qualify. But you can't always tell if they're going to do it. I mean, you want them to do it. You hope they'll do it. You hope they'll come in and learn. You hope that they'll take it serious. And then the other thing is you can try as hard as you can. Do I like this person? Are they engaging? Do I like listening to them talk? But you don't know until they start running leads if they're likable. How many times have you been on a ride along with a sales rep and you're like, man, this guy's a jerk. You know,
Oh
you
yeah.
didn't notice it before, and or they keep cutting the customer off. They're rude, or they say things they shouldn't say, or make comments they shouldn't make. I mean, you don't know. We had a sales manager once in Columbus that we had hired, um, came to us with a lot of experience, and we sent him out probably for his first 30 days to do nothing but run leads, and he couldn't give a window away. And I remember the owner of the company came to me and said, I need you to go ride with this guy and figure out what he's doing. And I went on a ride along with him. And I remember coming back to the office and I'm like, man, this guy's a jerk. And I had to spend probably 2 weeks just teaching the guy how to talk properly in a house. And, he was coming across so arrogant and so much better than the customer. And like, you need to buy these windows just because I showed up today and I'm telling you to do it. I mean, he just totally missed the whole building a relationship part of selling. So, you don't know. You don't know until you know. Isn't that what they say? You don't
Oh
know
yeah.
until you know. So you can love
Absolutely.
them. You can love them, but you can't make them do it, and you can't make people like them.
For
So,
sure. The next question is, does their personality type and their motivations align with your company and your culture?
uh, so important. You know, I don't want to give everything away from our webinar, but when you have a purpose statement and you've invested the time and the money as a company at developing a mission statement and your core values, it needs to be out on display. People coming in for an interview need to see it. They need to understand who you are, what you represent, and you need to have them on your desk in front of you so that when you're interviewing this person, you can say, does one of the core values at the company that we came from was whatever it takes. When I'm interviewing this person, are they giving me a whatever it takes vibe? Are they going to do whatever it takes to be successful, or they're going to do whatever it takes to go home. So very important.
Yeah, and you really need to be sure that their professional needs can be met by your organization. If a sales rep requires structure and a strong support system to feel comfortable and to perform at their best, and you don't have a reliable, trusted system in place that, or even just people that can provide that support to that individual, then that rep is going to struggle in your environment. Or if they have a very regimented and thorough process, but this applicant rebels against boundaries and has to have an extreme level of freedom and improvisation to succeed, then he's not going to be a good fit either. So you want to make sure, as talented as that person is, do you have what that person needs to succeed at your company?
Yeah, and I think it's also important, TJ, that when you're going through the interviewing process, that whether it's through an assessment or through an interview question or an assignment you give them before they come back for a final interview, is we got to find out, is this person going to be able to learn our sales process? Are they going to be able to memorize it? Are they going to be able to deliver it close to what our intentions are of how it's to be delivered? Can they pick stuff up quickly? How much of it are they retaining? Can they deliver it in an entertaining way? I mean, I don't know how Ben Stein keeps making it into every single one of our podcasts, but are they delivering the sales presentation like Ben Stein, or are they delivering it like Jerry Seinfeld? Are we laughing and having fun and getting entertained, or are we getting put to sleep? I mean, if somebody ever reaches out to me and you and says, hey, I love your podcast. I put it on every night before I go to bed, so I have something to put me to sleep. We know we're doing the wrong thing, right? So you got to make sure you find salespeople that they're fun, they're entertaining, but they got to be able to memorize some stuff. We're not looking for a parrot, but we are looking for people that can go out and tell the same story. And there are going to be parts of the presentation we're going to want them to nail. And you got to make sure you hire people that have that capability to learn and pick things up in a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a script that your company trains off of, man, I think the biggest loss of time and resources is trying to teach and train someone who has a really difficult time retaining information that way. If you spend hours and hours with someone going over the same content and they just cannot retain it, they cannot solidify that in their minds for whatever reason, that person is probably going to fail because it might be 2-3 months down the line, they haven't made many sales, they're not making much money, and they just end up quitting anyway. So even if they have the right personality, and man, there's been a couple reps over the years I can recall right off the top of my head that I thought had a phenomenal personality and would absolutely crush it in this line of work, but they just could not retain the information well enough. And, we eventually had to part ways.
Yep. You have to have, it has nothing to do with age. It has nothing to do with what level of education or how long you were in school. It's just simply, can you pick up enough of this that you can deliver enough to be successful? I mean, again, you brought it up the last time we talked about this. We're asking people to make, the second or third biggest investment in their life. We're asking them to make a decision of 10, 20, 30, $40,000. Are you going to be able to present your case? Are you going to be able to give the homeowner enough information to make a good decision? And that requires a lot. I mean, I remember when I went through training, I didn't get much sleep for 2 weeks. I was up at night studying. I was moving things over to index cards and making little Post-it notes and recording myself and listening to it while I drove and doing everything I could to get my presentations down. And, number one, do you have the ability, the capability of that? But number two, do you have the desire and the will to do it? Because you got to make that huge investment in yourself for your first couple of weeks, or it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think the most predictive metric that I have, and the problem is it's not really a metric, but the most predictive thing that I've found when it comes to training and recruiting is how much effort does that person put in really after the first day? We'll do things like, hey, take this back and study it and try to come back tomorrow and let's see how it goes. Or we might have different activities they can do, like, record this section and play it back or rewrite it in your own words. The people that come in with that work done, I'd never feared again after that. I knew that they were going to be successful. But the people that kind of blew it off or didn't give it the effort that it needed, those are the ones that always struggled. So that's the number one giveaway to success, is just effort.
Yeah, and listening to you and I go back and forth on all this, again, it's just reinforcing for me the importance of putting enough time in recruiting that you've got multiple people to look at, because, I mean, if you were to go out in your yard right now and I said, go out and find me a 4-leaf clover and meet me back in here in 2 minutes, I mean, what's the odds you're going to find a 4-leaf clover in your yard, right? I mean, hiring these diamonds in the rough, these top-notch superstars, you've got to interview a lot of people and have multiple candidates, so you make sure you're bringing the right one on board. And all this stuff just reinforces that for me. Never hire out of desperation.
Yeah.
Always have more people than you need. I mean, it's imperative.
And I think it's important, if you're hiring for 2 or 3 slots, I think you should probably try to hire 5 or 6 people for that training class. Because if you need 2 or 3 people and only one of those 2 or 3 that you hire works out, well, now you got to start the entire recruiting and training process all over again. So
yeah,
it's safer to overhire, knowing that probably 2 or 3 of them will not work out, than it is to underhire and have to spend all that time and resources a second time.
And you bring up a good point there, TJ, because you've got to be willing to cut. And if somebody's in training and they're not getting it, and you're on day 3, day 4, and they're still stuck on what they were supposed to learn the first night, and you can tell they're behind, you got to cut them loose. I mean, you got to do it early, because A, you're just wasting your time, and B, you don't want to slow the rest of the class down.
Yep, absolutely. And then the last little nuggets that we had before we finish up here are, at some point you have to determine whether you or sales management can be the full-time recruiter, or how much work needs to happen to be able to justify the cost of a full-time recruiter who's solely focused just on that.
Yep, that's imperative. If your company's big enough to support a full-time recruiter, just keep in mind you're going to need marketing reps, you're going to need sales reps, you're going to need installers. You got plenty of reasons to have a full-time recruiter, have a recruiting team. Obviously, you need the revenue to support it, and you need enough work to support it. But you're going to have to make that decision. When do we move from sales management doing all the recruiting to an actual recruiter? Because it may never happen. I mean, you may have a big enough sales management team, and they may do a good enough job to where you don't need that recruiter. But one thing you need to remember is a recruiter's job is the admin part of recruiting. Get the ads online, make sure you do the original screen calls, set up the interviews, pass out the assessments, keep things moving. But it's still got to be the management team that's making those decisions and doing the actual interviewing. But a good recruiter to keep things moving and to make sure that the process stays on course, you need to make a decision as a company. When is it going to pay for itself to have a recruiter? And, in my opinion, I want my sales management team in a training room training salespeople. I want them on a ride along, helping a sales rep become successful, putting a struggling sales rep on their back and getting them over the top, or in a training class, training a class of new people. I want my sales managers doing what's best for the sales team and the most profitable things. I don't know that spending a couple hours a day screen calling is the best use of that time. As I grow, yeah, there's plenty of time for that. But eventually you're going to reach a point to where you realize that I'd rather have my sales manager on a ride along with Bob, who has missed his last 6 leads, versus sitting in his office calling people for 2 hours to set up 2 interviews. So you need to make that decision as a business owner and directors of a business. Where do you want to put your resources?
Perfect. And another great question is, what can we create to ensure that the highly desired candidates that we want actually show up to our interview and don't take another opportunity before you can give them a chance?
Yep, and you know, there's some great tools out there. I will tell you that a lot of it has to do with the interview. Again, a lot of it's like setting a lead. Um, they have to see the value of the visit when you set a lead. They have to see the value of the interview when you do an interview. They need to understand that this is a great opportunity, that they're fortunate that they're getting to interview for it. But you want to set it in a timely manner. Just like setting a lead. If you set a lead for tomorrow, you know, there's an 80-90% chance it's going to run. If you set an interview for tomorrow, there's an 80-90% chance they're going to show up. Set it for a week out, you know, you're gambling, because how many more interviews are they going to go to between now and a week? They're going to lose interest. They're going to forget. I'm a big fan of, a lot of companies will send text messages to people after they set an interview with maybe a 30-second or a 60-second commercial where they're showing their sales team celebrating a victory or a record month, or passing out end of the year awards, or eating pizza, or having a party for some record they broke. But you know, there's great tools out there, and we'll share a lot of that during our upcoming webinar. But a lot of it has to do with just simple conversation. If I, you know, role play with me real quick, TJ, and then we'll end it. But if I said to you, so I have a 2 o'clock and a 3 o'clock tomorrow, which of those work best for you, TJ?
2 o'clock would be fine.
Are you sure? Is 2 o'clock definitely going to be a good time for you?
Yeah, it should be.
Should be. Or and the only reason I'm asking is because the response to this ad has been incredible, and I'm going to try to see as many people as I can over these next couple days to make sure that I give everybody an opportunity to take advantage of this great sales position. And if tomorrow at 2 is not 100% sure for you, we can pick another time and I'll get you in here. But I want to make sure if we settle on 2 o'clock tomorrow, I know you're going to be here, so somebody else doesn't miss out on that opportunity. So
yeah,
2's
2 o'clock
definitely good for you.
Yeah, 2's great.
All right. So, you know, a lot of it has to do with just setting it up properly on the phone. If they ask for your phone number, you know, they're asking for a reason. And also, even though I know this is frustrating for some of you out there, because we just expect people to have a little bit of initiative and to be able to do things on their own, but don't assume anything. Send them a text with the address of your location. Send them a text with the person they're going to ask for when they walk in. If you're recruiting for somebody else in your organization, send them a text that says you have an interview tomorrow at 2 o'clock with TJ Parsons at 123 East Main Street. But just don't assume. Just, you would think people know how to look up an address and do their part, but just be thorough. Thoroughness, a lot of times that extra level of thoroughness gives people a better peace of mind and a reassurance of where they're possibly going to work.
Excellent. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Something I heard a long time ago, I forget who said it, but recruiting is like shaving. If you don't do it every single day, you're going to start looking a little rough, right? You got to have a process. Please, if you got anything out of this podcast today, you've got a system for setting leads. You got systems and methodologies for selling. You got systems on how to measure, order, install, service. Please come up with a system, scripts, and methodologies for recruiting. Don't have to sit back with your accountant or your controller and say, all right, we had 3 bad hires last month. How many deals do I need to install this month to make up for all of that loss? I think if you start looking at recruiting with those through those lenses of not only how long does it take to find somebody when I have to hire, but how much is it going to cost me if I hire the wrong person, you'll take this very important part of running your business much more important. And like the quote said earlier, recruiting will become one of your business partners.
But now we get to the real excitement, which is announcing our very first webinar. We've been talking about it for a few weeks, but we are finally ready to announce it.
Really?
October 19th, Friday, October 19th, will be championship level closing, which will be a 2-hour in-depth training session of our best material. So this is something we've been working on for a while, but in Crash Course, this podcast will continue to deliver the same great content every week. But our webinars will be where we reveal our home run world-class techniques that we've built our careers upon. And championship level closing part 1 will feature top level tactics that we've only ever shared with our exclusive clients. And this will be our most powerful and transformative content that we ever produce. So we're going to reveal a ton of stuff like a roadmap for how to one-call close any customer, as well as a number of other things. So as we get closer to that, you're going to see posts. We'll have QR codes you can use to be able to get tickets to the event. But we're really, really excited. Of course, we're still doing the giveaway. So if you would like to be a part of the webinar, you can still send us an email with your contact information, and we'll be drawing a name for the giveaway. And you and your entire company will gain access to that webinar. So that's really exciting. But it's going to be a really, really powerful content, the best stuff that we've got.
And I love the theme, man. Championship level closing. Where did you get that theme from? Wouldn't have anything to do with that championship belt on the wall behind you, would it?
It could be part of the inspiration. It's possible. Possible, but it's all about what makes us champions, what makes us the best at what we do.
Well, you're the greatest tag team partner that I've ever had. So I appreciate you.
Same to you.
You're doing a phenomenal job. And all right, so last thing I've got is go sell something.
And if you or your business is in need of training, recruiting, process development, or consulting, you can contact us here at Tony Hody Training and Consulting by visiting tonyhody.com. Click the contact tab and enter your information for a free consultation to see how we can help you grow your business. Tony Hody Training and Consulting, teaching ordinary people how to do extraordinary things.